and welcome to the Pig and Whistle Tales from Azeroth. As always, here at the Pig and Whistle Inn in Stormwind, I go for a variety of subjects with regards to World of Warcraft. So grab a bottle or a pint, sit back and enjoy. This session we're going to be going over the state of PvP, because it is in a real state. And that's putting it lightly, I will say that. This is retail PvP. As Wrath PvP, I don't think will ever change. There won't be any sort of balancing patches or anything like that. Retail constantly is changing with balancing patches, new patches coming out, talent trees revamped, PvP talents nerfed, buffed, etc. And yeah, it is a right state at the moment. But we will get into that very shortly. We will carry on with the weekly news as always. We have, Basrikron as your weekly world boss for this week. He is located in the Waking Shore. We have Mr. Pandaria time walking this week. So if you have any time walking badges and you wish to spend them on Mr. Pandaria items such as mounts, rep, etc., you are more than welcome to do so. Shadowpan Showdown is our brawl for this week. This is the one where you're in groups of 6 and essentially you have a boss that you need to kill while PvPing the enemy team. The mythic affixes for this week are Bolstering, Storming, Fortified and Thundering. Bolstering, whenever a mob dies, it gives damage and health increase to the mobs next to it. So kill them all at the same time or just don't do big pulls at all. Storming, very simple. Some storm clouds are spawning around the mobs. They just hit you up into the air. Can be very annoying. Fortified, the mobs, the non-boss enemies are tankier and deal more damage, so make sure you bring a talent build for that. And Thundering, the seasonal affix, you get a negative or positive charge in your group, and essentially it increases your damage, but when the timer runs out, will stun and deal damage to you. You want to cleanse this by running into someone with the opposite charge, otherwise it will do a lot of damage and possibly just kill you straight out. Bestial Wrath is the spell that we will be looking at. It is a hunter ability that is basically only for Beast Mastery hunters. So it was introduced in Burning Crusade, and what it did was the immunity grant, or it basically increased your pet's damage and your damage a little bit, essentially. It was, introduced in Classic, but the first change came in Burning Crusade. The immunity granted by Bestial Wrath now lasts the full duration of the ability. Also grants immunity to Cyclone. Very interesting. The next change was in Wrath as well. The duration reduced to 10 seconds. In addition, hunters with this talent will do 10% additional damage at all times. Bestial Wrath and the Beast Within changed to function like PvP trinkets. You can use it in any form of CC. Cyclones, saps, fears, anything at all. So it's another trinket, which is incredibly strong in a PvP scenario. More than you realise, to be honest. It got one change in Cataclysm, cost removed and damage bonus decreased by 20%, which is a bit sad. And then a few changes in Mr. Pandaria. It is now a baseline ability instead of a talent for BM hunters. No longer grants hunter pets immunity to crowd control effects, and instead now breaks existing crowd control effects when activated. Okay, that's fine. May now be activated when there is no line of sight on the hunter's pet. Just a nice quality of life buff. Warlords of Draenor saw one change to this ability. Now naturally includes the effects of the Beast Within. What the Beast Within does is essentially it gives the hunter the buff as well. It increases your attack speed and provides immunity to fear and horror effects. The next change, there was a few actually in Legion. It no longer causes the pet to break all loss of control effects or shots to cost... So my brain. It no longer causes the pet to break all loss of control effects or shots to cost 50% less focus. Okay, no, you didn't mishear me. That's literally how it's read. But increases the hunter's damage by 20%, up from 10%. Using Dire Beast now reduces the cooldown, but its cooldown has been increased from 1 minute to 1.5 minutes. Okay, very, very simple. And then it got a simple damage increase, damage bonus increased by 25%. And then the cooldown effect now learned at level 54 during Legion. Got a couple of changes during Battle for Azeroth that now increase the damage of you and your pet by 20%, down from 25, so a small nerf to it. Barb shot damage is now also affected by Bestial Wrath. This means that damage increase and is applied to barbed shot, which is very, very good. Shadowlands now causes your pet to instantly deal damage to the target upon activation. And then finally in Dragonflight, now a row 6 talent was a level 20 ability, rank 2 split off to become Bestial Wrath or Barbed Wrath. And that is basically Barb Shot reduces the cooldown of Bestial Wrath by 12 seconds. 12 seconds is insane, by the way, and you have 2 charges of this. And when you use Bestial Wrath, you get 2 charges of Barb Shot back. So the uptime that you have on Bestial Wrath is very, very insane. Not quite as much as Paladins having wings up, though. Yeah, okay. Let's get into this. World of Warcraft, the state of PvP. So there was a patch that recently dropped. It was March. Yes, we're in April, not March. It was in March, and it was late March, 27th, something like that. Essentially, what it did was bring around the Forbidden Reach, which is some more story content and stuff like that, sort of setting up the next phase, or the next big patch, which is 10.1, which comes out, by the way, next month, which is really, really good. But what it also brung doesn't sound like a word anymore. What this brought was the Retribution Paladin changes. Now, these were on the PTR, and they were on the PTR for a good month, maybe 2 even. And essentially, what has happened is, since then, Retribution Paladins have been nerfed 3 times. 3 times. So the first day that they were brought out, if you to do Arena on that day, they were so unkillable, it was unreal. The healing that they had passively through Faded Light and absolutely everything was immensely high. It was well overtuned. This only lasted a couple of days. This sort of spike in terms of their survivability, but it was to the point where they could 1v3. It felt like they could 1v3. They would just slowly rot you down, which is hilarious. And what brought... I don't even know where to start with this. Okay, I'm just going to say it's in a very bad spot because of Ret Paladins. Now, if you've mained a Ret throughout the entirety of your life, fair enough. Like, I'm not blaming you for this. This is obviously... Retribution Paladins needed to be looked at, but what has happened to them is by far way too crazy. So I'm going to put this into perspective for others. Boomkin, which is my main specialization, I have had a couple of changes. I've had a couple buffs, I've had a couple nerfs, but ultimately I'm in no different position. It's a very niche spec that goes with very few other classes, essentially, like Demon Hunter, maybe another caster. It's not great. I haven't set the world ablaze with my new talent trees getting swapped around a little bit, etc. Whereas Paladin got a complete gutting of the talent tree and another one thrown right in with loads of different things. So the PvP talent, Unbridled Freedom, that's just now a talent. So that gives 2 people Blessing of Freedom rather than just 1. And it makes it very, very good because this frees up a PvP talent slot, which went to the Blessing of Light or something it's called. Essentially, whenever they throw a judgment, it will dispel a magic effect on the player. Or the judgment hits, it will dispel a magic effect that person has applied to someone that has now been changed to just the paladin, which is really good, by the way. But this is very bad because they now had 2 judgments, so they're constantly throwing judgments and dispelling like so many debuffs. It got to the point where I was so annoyed that I just logged onto my Affliction Warlock and wanted to throw Unstable Affliction on the paladins, because it got to the point where all of the dispel protection isn't enough against these paladins. If you want dispel protection to work in the game, you need it to be something like Unstable Affliction, where it will just pump damage if it is dispelled, because paladins are dispelling absolutely everything. If you're a class that needs dots in order to function, it makes it so passively tanky that it's impossible to actually pump any damage into the paladin to start with. Therefore, you can't even get cooldowns out of him. Therefore, you'll never be able to kill him. So no matter what he's playing with, you have to target that instead. If you are a dot class, such as Shadow Priest or Moonkin, for example, even stuff like Mage, like he's just constantly dispelling your slows, and like it's really obnoxious. The only one that can stand up to it is kind of Affliction Warlock with Unstable Affliction. Even then, he just doesn't care about it. He's almost brushing it off. He's like taking a punch from Mike Tyson, and he's like, "Oh yeah, who cares? I don't care about that. That's like just a baby hit almost. I'll just shrug that off and go next." So yeah, Ret Paladins have had a massive spike in their playing time, and it is due to this rework. So I have a graph here right in front of me, and it's basically the data from when the patch was released and before, and the sort of playability, not playability, the representation, that was it, of Retribution Paladins in PvP. So if you look at the start of Dragonflight, you look at sort of around... Wait, hold up. My brain is getting there. Okay, so this is over the past month. So last month, on the 8th of the 3rd, it was around about 5%. This is overall sort of PvP data, so this is like the representation of it. I would imagine kind of it's all adding up to 100%, and this is the representation of this specialization. So it's around about 3% last month, and it's a constant 3%. It got maybe to 4% at its highest, and then as soon as that patch dropped, it went up, and it didn't go to like 10%, didn't go to 15%, 20%? No, it exceeded that. Okay, 25%. No, it kept going. 28% representation in all arenas. This is... So, to give you some perspective, you have Shadow Priest. Let's see, how many classes? You have Druid, Warrior, Paladin, Evoker, Demon Hunter, Rogue, Mage, Shaman. I'm forgetting some of the classes, aren't I? I'm trying to go through them in my head like really quickly. Monk. You have about 10 to 12 classes. Retribution Paladins, the specialization alone, not just Paladins in general, Retribution Paladins made up 28% of the entire arena ladder, like the playability. It's insane, leaving... oh my god, my maths is so poor right now. Leaving 72% for the other however many classes, and then you have to take into consideration the specializations, because some people might play Feral Druid, some people might play Balanced Druid, etc. So it's absolutely crazy to think about. As a example, what I'll do is I'll say that there's 10 spare classes here. We have about 70% representation left. You have to give 7% to each of them classes for an even spread. So Paladin is representing the classes 4 times as much. And it's still very much up there. To this week, it's still very much above the 20. It's in between 21% and 28%. It's about 24, 25% right now. And I look at my chart because I have a add-on that shows basically my arena history. And it shows what MMR people were, what we faced, what comp we used, how much damage I did, how much healing, etc., etc. And if you look at it, I've played about 60 games in the past few days. About 60? No, more like 100. I'll say 100. I'll give it a round figure. I would safely say 70 to 80% of them games had a Retribution Paladin. And that's not healthy for the game. It's like watching AWC towards the end of Shadowlands. It was all Rogue Mage Priest. You never want a meta where only one or two classes is hard dominating. If you look at the early stages of Dragonflight, okay, Demon Hunters were a bit kind of crazy, that kind of thing. But there were loads of different compositions. It wasn't just a shit ton of Retribution Paladins. It's disgusting. And the thing is, Retribution Paladins, I might trigger some people here, but they're one of the easier classes to pick up in PvP. If you look at Demonology Warlock, if they're OP, that's fine. It's annoying because it is an overpowered class or spec, but the thing is, Warlock and Demonology Warlock, I think it's a lot tougher to pick up than it is a Retribution Paladin in terms of its intricacies. Because Retribution Paladin, you can run in there with a warrior and just zug the hell out of everything. It's like, oh, I see Boomkin, I zug. It's that kind of thing. I press Hodge, I can just bubble whenever I want. It's absolutely ludicrous. And it really needs to, like I said, they've nerfed it 3 times already. 3 times. And it is still so good. It's still one of the best specializations. To the point where in AWC, you will see every single team running a Retribution Paladin. Without a doubt, you will see a Retribution Paladin in all of the teams competing in AWC. If they realistically want to win the tournament, they will be playing this. And it's disgusting to see. I mean this in the nicest way to Retribution Paladins, but piss off. We don't want you this strong. Now, it's kind of harsh to say because Paladins have been very neglected in PvP scene. In a PvP scene, they have been very, very neglected. And I'm all for giving them buffs and bringing them in line with other classes that are very viable. But to bring them above and beyond every other class to the point where it is literally in every game you see a Retribution Paladin, it's not good for the game. And it's not good for Ret Paladins as well, because people will just keep on complaining about your class until it is gutted. So you want to find a good, healthy middle ground where your skill will actually prevail in games compared to you just raw damaging everything and zugging and winning, that kind of thing. So I'm all for giving the lower classes and specs buffs and reworks and stuff. I'm a boomkin. I want a rework. I want to feel powerful for once. I do a lot of damage, but it's only chip damage. I'm moonfiring people, and it's oh yeah, that's doing a lot. It's hitting for 5k. Everyone can outheal 5k. A paladin can with his absorbs. A warlock can with his absorbs. So, it's not healthy for the game, PvP wise, because, yeah, like I said, they've nerfed it 3 times already, and it's still very much meta. Very, very much. It's so in your face, and it's it's just crazy, and it's so annoying to see. Speaking of paladins, there was a really weird interaction that I had with one earlier today in my arena games. It was a Windwalker monk, a affliction warlock, and a holy paladin. Now, this is a very much cause of concern because this holy paladin hit a 177k ability that can hit 177k, but he never pressed it. So the talent that I'm talking about is one where your blessing is sacrifice. The damage that it like stores essentially stacks up and you can unleash it into a target as damage. But in this game, it lasted about 10 seconds, the game. He bubbled, ran up to my monk, and essentially just one-shot them. And the thing is, he never pressed this ability. He never pressed... Oh my god, my words. He never pressed Blessing as Sacrifice. Now, I'm very concerned because I have the footage. I clip it. I sort of record and clip anything that is a bit weird so that I can look back at it and stuff. We look back at it, all my team that I play with, and there's nothing to suggest that he has this. No buff, no nothing. He didn't even sack in the arena. You can clearly see that he didn't. So he has come into the arena with this buff, and it is a massive damage increase. It's a massive one-shot potential, and you don't know that he has it. So what he has done, what we believe he has done, is outside of the arena, he is sitting next to his monk or warlock, and his monk and warlock are basically just tanking damage from enemy mobs, and he is blessing as sacrificing them, so that he builds up this buff, and then they enter the arena and the buff stays, which is bug abusing for one, so please don't do this because you can get banned for it. But it's such a pathetic way to like gain rating. Surely you think, oh, that's not really fulfilling. It's quite funny, but at the same time, when the bug gets fixed, you're just going to tank rating because you're dog shit. That's the thing. These players, like some of the rep players as well, they have an inflated rating because of where their class is at the moment. And a lot of the paladins that you see in your current rating are probably 300, 400 rating below. But because of the spec right now, it's just inflation for them. And they might stay up there because who knows? But I would imagine when nerfs go through that a lot of these paladins will start to tank their rating and go all the way down again, which will be great to see, and I'm so for it. But yeah, the state of PvP, they're trying to get it in check in terms of patches, in terms of, what do you call it, balance changes. But they need to do this a lot more. They need to gut it a lot quicker because they need to look at a couple things. Wings for one, because Wings is a 1 minute cooldown. Their biggest damaging cooldown is a 1 minute cooldown. This increases their damage and healing by 25%, a flat 25%. To give you some context, my biggest cooldown gives me 10 haste, 10% haste, and 10% crit. It's not good, or nowhere near as good as that, but this is a 2 minute cooldown. 3 minutes if I don't take a certain talent. Whereas the Paladin one is a 2 minute cooldown baseline and a 1 minute cooldown if they take a talent, which why wouldn't you? Plus, so this is a 25-second buff that they have, their biggest cooldown, and they can get a proc on top of this for about 12 seconds, I believe. So they can have 37 seconds of uptime in this Avenging Wrath, and it's a minute cooldown. They have 23 seconds of downtime. I have a minute and 30 of downtime, which is realistically the only time that I will ever be able to kill something without like a very good CC chain on, like in between this and my hunter kills something that I'm queuing with. So it's absolutely ridiculous, and I think Wings definitely needs to be looked at. They do not need a 1 minute Wings. 2 minute Wings, and I think they're in a good spot. I honestly think that they will be in a good spot if you just put them at a 2 minute Wings, because 1 minute, the amount of uptime that they have, it's kind of crazy. It's absolutely crazy, to be honest with you. But yeah, it's one of them things. They will look at it and hopefully they'll change it all before like patch 10.1, because it would be nice to push like the higher ratings of Arena without having to trudge my way through so many ret warriors just slapping my boomkin essentially. But that is it for this episode. Thank you all very much for listening. As always, do check out the Patreon as well as Twitch and YouTube. Constant stuff happening over there. Thank you all very much once again, and go with Valor, friend. Goodbye all.